and sent on its way, the third big sighting of 1948, Volume 3 of the Classics, took place. The date was October 1st, and the place was Fargo, North Dakota. It was the famous Gorman incident in which a pilot fought a duel of death with a UFO. The pilot was George F. Gorman, a 25-year-old second lieutenant in the North Dakota Air National Guard. It was 8:30 in the evening, and Gorman was coming into Fargo from a cross-country flight. He flew around Fargo for a while, and about 9 o'clock decided to land. He called the control tower for landing instructions, and was told that a Piper Cub was in the area. He saw the Cub below him. All of a sudden, what appeared to be the tail light of another airplane passed him on his right. He called the tower and complained, but they assured him that no other aircraft except the Cub were in the area. Gorman could still see the light, so he decided to find out what it was. He pushed the F-51 over into a turn and cut in toward the light. He could plainly see the Cub outlined against the city lights below, but he could see no outline of a body near the mysterious light. He gave the 51 more power and closed to within 1,000 yards, close enough to estimate that the light was 6 to 8 inches in diameter, was sharply outlined, and was blinking on and off. Suddenly, the light became steady as it apparently put on power. It pulled into a sharp left bank and made a pass at the tower. The light zoomed up with the F-51 in hot pursuit. At 7,000 feet, it made a turn. Gorman followed and tried to cut inside the light's turn to get closer to it, but he couldn't do it. The light made another turn, and this time, the 51 closed on a collision course. The UFO appeared to try to ram the 51, and Gorman had to dive to get out of the way. The UFO passed over the 51's canopy with only a few feet to spare. Again, both the F-51 and the object turned and closed on each other head-on. And again, the pilot had to dive out to prevent a collision. All of a sudden, the light began to climb and disappeared. I had the distinct impression that its maneuvers were controlled by thought or reason, Gorman later told ATIC investigators. 4 other observers at Fargo partially corroborated A.D. Cannon, the Cub's pilot, and his passenger, Einar Nielsen. They saw a light moving fast, but did not witness all the maneuvers that Gorman reported. 2 CAA employees on the ground saw a light move over the field once. Project Sign investigators rushed to Fargo. They had wired ahead to ground the plane. They wanted to check it over before it flew again. When they arrived, only a matter of hours after the incident, they went over the airplane, from the prop spinner to the rudder trim tab, with a Geiger counter. A chart in the official report shows where every Geiger counter reading was taken. For comparison, they took readings on a similar airplane that hadn't been flown for several days. Gorman's airplane was more radioactive. They rushed around, got sworn statements from the tower operators and oculists, and flew back to Dayton. In the file on the Gorman incident, I found an old memo reporting the meeting that was held upon the ATIC team's return from Fargo. The memo concluded that some weird things were taking place. The historians of the UFO agree. Donald Kehoe, a retired Marine Corps major and a professional writer, author of The Flying Saucers Are Real and Flying Saucers from Outer Space, needles the Air Force about the Gorman incident, pointing out how, after feebly hinting that the light could have been a lighted weather balloon, they dropped it like a hot UFO. Some person by the name of Wilkins, in an equally authoritative book, says that the Gorman incident stumped the Air Force. Other assorted historians point out that normally the UFOs are peaceful. Gorman and Mantell just got too inquisitive. They just weren't ready to be observed closely. If the Air Force hadn't slapped down the security lid, these writers might not have reached this conclusion. There have been other and more lurid duels of death. On July 21, 1952, at 10:58 p.m., a Ground Observer Corps spotter reported that a slow-moving craft was nearing the AEC's Oak Ridge Laboratory, an area so secret that it is prohibited to aircraft. The spotter called the light into his filter center, and the filter center relayed the message to the ground control intercept radar. They had a target, but before they could do more than confirm the GOC spotter's report, the target faded from the radar scope. An F-47 aircraft on combat air patrol in the area was vectored in visually, spotted a light, and closed on it. They fought from 10,000 to 27,000 feet, and several times the object made what seemed to be ramming attacks. The light was described as white, 6 to 8 inches in diameter, and blinking until it put on power. The pilot could see no silhouette around the light. The similarity to the Fargo case was striking. On the night of December 10, 1952, near another atomic installation, the Hanford plant in Washington, the pilot and radar observer of a patrolling F-94 spotted a light while flying at 26,000 feet. The crew called their ground control station and were told that no planes were known to be in the area. They closed on the object and saw a large, round, white thing with a dim reddish light coming from 2 windows. They lost visual contact but got a radar lock on. They reported that when they attempted to close on it again, it would reverse direction and dive away. Several times the plane altered course itself because collision seemed imminent. In each of these instances, as well as in the case narrated next, the sources of the stories were trained airmen with excellent reputations. They were sincerely baffled by what they had seen. They had no conceivable motive for falsifying or dressing up their reports. The other dogfight occurred September 24, 1952, between a Navy pilot of a TBM and a light over Cuba. The pilot had just finished making some practice passes for night fighters when he spotted an orange light to the east of his plane. He checked on aircraft in the area, learned that the object was unidentified, and started after it. Here is his report, written immediately after he landed. As it, the light, approached the city from the east, it started a left turn. I started to intercept. During the first part of the chase, the closest I got to the light was 8 to 10 miles. At this time, it appeared to be as large as an SNJ and had a greenish tail that looked to be 5 to 6 times as long as the light's diameter. This tail was seen several times in the next 10 minutes in periods of from 5 to 30 seconds each. As I reached 10,000 feet, it appeared to be at 15,000 feet and in a left turn. It took 40 degrees of bank to keep the nose of my plane on the light. At this time, I estimated the light to be in a 10 to 15 mile orbit. At 12,000 feet, I stopped climbing, but the light was still climbing faster than I was. I then reversed my turn from left to right, and the light also reversed. As I was not gaining distance, I held a steady course south, trying to estimate a perpendicular between the light and myself. The light was moving north, so I turned north. As I turned, the light appeared to move west, then south over the base. I again tried to intercept at a 60-degree angle. It climbed to 35,000 feet, then started a rapid descent. Prior to this, while the light was still at approximately 15,000 feet, I deliberately placed it between the moon and myself 3 times to try to identify a solid body. I and my 2 crewmen all had a good view of the light as it passed the moon. We could see no solid body. We considered the fact that it might be an aerologist's balloon, but we did not see a silhouette. Also, we would have rapidly caught up with and passed a balloon. During its descent, the light appeared to slow down at about 10,000 feet, at which time I made 3 runs on it. 2 were on a 90-degree collision course, and the light traveled at tremendous speed across my bow. On the 3rd run, I was so close that the light blanked out the airfield below me. Suddenly it started a dive, and I followed, losing it at 1,500 feet. In this incident, the UFO was a balloon. The following night, a lighted balloon was sent up, and the pilot was ordered up to compare his experiences. He duplicated his dogfight, illusions and all. The Navy furnished us with a long analysis of the affair, explaining how the pilot had been fooled. In the case involving the ground observer and the F-47 near the atomic installation, we plotted the winds and calculated that a lighted balloon was right at the spot where the pilot encountered the light. In the other instance, the white object with 2 windows, we found that a skyhook balloon had been plotted at the exact site of the battle. Gorman fought a lighted balloon too. An analysis of the sighting by the Air Weather Service sent to ATIC in a letter dated January 24, 1949, proved it. The radioactive F-51 was decontaminated by a memo from a Wright Field laboratory explaining that a recently flown airplane will be more radioactive than one that has been on the ground for several days. An airplane at 20,000 to 30,000 feet picks up more cosmic rays than one shielded by the Earth's ever-present haze. Why can't experienced pilots recognize a balloon when they see one? If they are flying at night, odd things can happen to their vision. There is the problem of vertigo as well as disorientation brought on by flying without points of reference. Night fighters have told dozens of stories of being fooled by lights. One night during World War II, we had just dumped a load of bombs on a target when a night fighter started to make a pass at us. Everyone in the cockpit saw the fighter's red-hot exhaust stack as he bore down on us. I cut loose with 6 caliber 50 machine guns. Fortunately, I missed the night fighter. If I'd have shot it, I'd have fouled up the astronomers, but good, because the night fighter was Venus. While the people on Project Sign were pondering over Lieutenant Gorman's dogfight with the UFO, at the time they weren't even considering the balloon angle. The top-secret estimate of the situation was working its way up into the higher echelons of the Air Force. It got to the late General Hoyt S. Vandenberg, then Chief of Staff, before it was batted back down. The general wouldn't buy interplanetary vehicles. The report lacked proof. A group from ATIC went to the